Good morning, good afternoon for some of you. Warm welcome, everyone here joined to this webinar about our AutoVault protection for data and file servers and cloud, and about a feature called agents monitoring. Thank you very, very much for joining. Thank you for finding the time, for your interest. My name is Michał Kamacz. For those of you who don't know me, you can call me Michael as well. I am a pre-sales engineer here at SealPath, so my job is to help our sales teams all around the globe in all the technical aspects during the sales process. I'm doing product presentations, demos, proof of concepts, etc. Also doing trainings, okay? So for our customers, partners, and our internal staff. And I do webinars like this one today. So today we will be talking about one product, one new feature we are offering. Product you might be familiarized with. It's our AutoVault module, also called file server module. You might know it as the file server module. We have rebranded the product. We have given it a little thought, a little upgrade. There are some new features that you might not know yet, so I will be presenting them during the presentation. Afterwards, I will be showing you how the module works in a little demo. And in the second part of the webinar, I will be talking about the agent monitoring feature, and also show you some views from the admin's perspective, how to use it and how to take advantage of it. Okay, so let's jump right into the first part, into the AutoVault part, where I would like to talk about problems related to file repositories and why should we care about the security of the data we have inside of it. Okay, so basically we have identified 3 problems when it comes to file repositories. First one is when the file is leaving the repository, is being downloaded, for example, right? So once it gets out, control is usually lost. When we do collaboration with external users, okay, and you don't want to share it, it's not possible to protect the file, you have to share it in plain text. Sometimes also refers when we collaborate internally, we don't have protection mechanisms for such collaborations. And the third problem is in case of a breach. We usually, users of companies, organizations that use file repositories do not have additional security measures. They are pretty much defenseless when it comes to data breaches on file repositories. So talking about the breaches first, there could be internal actors, employees, for example. They usually access folders they should have access to, okay, and there are usually fewer controls. Those repositories usually are not protected at all, or there is a little chaos going on when it comes to permissions. You might have experienced that as well in your company or a previous company. When we start to give permission to folders because there is an urgency, someone needs to access a certain folder, and then the chaos starts. The company, the organization grows, transforms, people lose control over who has access to what kind of folder and why that should be, etc. So yeah, that could be a potential problem. Also, external actors could infiltrate to the network, both local or on the cloud, and there are no additional protection measures that they can access everything, basically, okay? Then the problem of the security beyond the repository when you need data to leave the repository. Again, in cases of collaboration, for example, you cannot rely on the security measures that external companies do have or do not have at all. Control is lost because there are usually no safeguards in places where you share the files to, okay? there might be no mechanism at all. You basically lose control. You are totally dependent on what is happening in security from the security perspective on your external users. And yeah, concerning collaborations, generally speaking, some measures that are taken to control collaboration, there might be some obstacles you put as an admin. They force users to get creative and to look for ways, non-secure ways to collaborate, to use maybe channels, their private channels, private email providers, or whatever channels they're using, instant messaging, to overcome those obstacles you have put in. And yeah, that could be even worse than the actual remedy or the actual security measure you have implemented. So keeping that in mind, also when you collaborate, you lose control over documents, because in the end, you need the third party to be able to modify in some cases. Okay, you cannot share the file, protect it, encrypt it, you pass it on plain, and that could cause several problems. So the question here would be, are you confident that your data will be safe in your repository or when it travels outside? I would like to present our AutoVault, our solution that protects in various file repositories, in file servers, on-prem, NAS, wherever you store your most valuable assets, your data. And it maintains the protection even when the file leaves the repository. Okay, you might know us as a company with a solution that protects files and offers a protection to the file wherever the file is. So the AutoVault does exactly this on file repositories and on file servers. Previously, you might remember it, or you might know it as SealPath file server module, our flagship product. So yeah, again, I will present some of the features of that product, and later on I will do a very quick demo of it, okay? So when it comes to the protection itself, it's a permanent protection. It is applied during the process of protection. We encrypt files basically and allow the protection to travel with the file. Okay, so this is considered to be a basic SealPath feature. The protection itself, it's a robust shield. You can say it's an encryption. We use industry standard encryption methods. So yeah, file will be encrypted and protected at all time. It allows to have secure collaboration. You will be able to control who has access to your information. It will not alter the way your users work. It will not interfere in the processes the users are executing in their day-to-day. So keeping that in mind, let me explain you a little better how that protection actually works. So at the first stage, you basically create a protection rule, a folder protection rule, how we call it, okay? That can be done on endpoint level with our desktop solution as well. But here we would do it for a specific folder on your file repository. So once this rule is created, we start with the protection process. So at the first stage, the product encrypts every file that is within that folder, potentially in subfolders as well, if you include subfolders to the protection rule. And from that moment on, it watches those folders and make sure that every time a new file appears in that folder, so if someone copies, moves, or creates a file within that folder, that new file will be protected immediately. Okay, so that's the way the system works. First, it protects everything, and second, it watches to make sure every new file is being protected as well. And from that moment on, you as the protector or the admin can manage the accesses remotely, modify the policy give more, give less permissions, audit and monitor the accesses that are being done to your files, monitor if there are some suspicious activity, etc. From the end user's point of view, it's very, very simple. The user basically uploads the document to a specific folder, or creates it within a specific folder. SealPath analyzes. Well, there are two ways, actually. The simple way would be just to create a folder protection, to apply a policy to that file, okay, if you want to go the simple way. We have also a more sophisticated way now. I will talk about that a little later on, which is the possibility to protect based on federated policies. So in that case, basically what happens is we read permissions from your SharePoint, from your Nextcloud, permissions that you have assigned over a certain folder for certain users. We read what is what permissions are given for that folder, and we dynamically create and update our federated policy accordingly to those permissions. Okay, so every time you modify something on SharePoint side, permission-wise, that will be updated on your SealPath IRM policy. Okay, so in that use case, user drops a file, permissions will be applied according to the permissions in the folder. If the file leaves the repository, the file remains protected with the permissions that were given to the folder. If you should change permission, you as an admin should change permission over that folder, those permissions will adapt even though the file is in a different continent, in some different country, wherever the file should be, okay? So basically you manage your SharePoint permissions, for example, and then file permissions will adapt accordingly. So let me talk about some capabilities. We have the possibility, as you know from other products, to manage the policy, allow access to certain users, and remove access, control digital rights over files, view, edit, print, copy and paste, etc. The automatic protection, where the protection is applied without the need for any manual action. Once you create your rule, users just drop files into a folder, and they will be protected automatically. In case of Office files, we have native access, okay? So you can just double-click the file, and it will open with Office without any need of an agent. So there will be just credentials windows popping up, asking you for your SealPath credentials, and then you will be able to open the file and work with the file with the permissions you have been given. Or you can use our secure browser, which works for Office and PDF files. So again, no agent needed. You just upload the file to the secure browser and can open, even edit the file within the browser. Another capability is the possibility to monitor actions, track information here, as you see, who has already accessed my document on one hand, and then also to track suspicious actions, see warnings, who is trying to access my file without any permission, etc. It allows you to react to suspicious events or make adjustments on the fly. Okay, everything you do on the policy will have an immediate effect to your files wherever they are. You can remove users from a policy. You can lower or give them more permissions, lower their permission level. That can be done on user level, on group level, as you see here, or you can even block certain files to make sure no one would be able to access those files anymore. Its graphical user interface, we will take a look at that in a moment, is ready to integrate with connectors. It has the possibility to show you your folder structure from Nextcloud or from SharePoint, for example, with this folder picker. I will demonstrate that in a moment. You can choose the folder type you want to protect. That could be file system, SharePoint, Google Drive, or Nextcloud, or other file repositories. Also to highlight here that we help to be compliant with various regulations for files at rest, in transit, and use, and for those who require the use of encryption as well. So let me present 3 quick use cases where customers are using AutoVault. First is a customer from the financial sector, a payment card company, which who required to be PCI regulation compliant. They had to protect corporate files on OneDrive folders of their users. So SealPath was able or is able to create folder protection over OneDrive folders. And the benefits here are that it's very easy to implement and use. Data will be under control, and in this case, the PCI regulation will be fulfilled. Use case number 2, a high-tech semiconductor company managing CAD files which are stored in SharePoint folders. So we have also created folder protection rules here to make sure files are protected when uploaded, and the protection would travel with files once they share files with external designers, for example, with the possibility to revoke access, track the activity, etc. So the benefits are that the supply chain data is protected. It's an automatic protection and the possibility of real-time access revocation when a project comes to an end, for example, or if there is a delay, whatever happens, just by adjusting the expiration date, you can control if access to your files should be given or not. And the last use case, a company, a leading football club, actually a leading European football club, who is managing a lot of players' contracts and medical records that are stored on the desktops of the employees and in file repositories. So the access permission is managed through corporate policies. We apply dynamic watermarks and have an activity monitoring to know who is accessing the files. And if there is any suspicious activity going on. The benefits here are critical data is protected with watermarks, and you have, or the customer has, full visibility over activity over their files. So that will be it about the basic features. Now, some of the new features we have implemented in our AutoVault product would be the unprotection rules. That's a rule type you can choose from that would allow you to create a folder unprotection rule. Okay, so you can define that certain folders should make sure that every time, first of all, it would unprotect everything that is within a certain folder. And in the second stage, it will make sure that every time a new protected file appears on that folder, it would be unprotected automatically. Okay. You can fine adjust this kind of rule to say, I only want certain files with a certain policy to be unprotected. Not every file should be unprotected. That's one thing one setup you can implement, but you can have a granular control as well to say, I only want files protected with policy ABC to be unprotected, nothing more. Okay, so a good use case here could be for some interactions with externals who requires to have the files unprotected. So you can have such a folder created within your company with a restricted access to it maybe. So certain files would be dropped there before they are shared with someone from outside, for example, okay? Or you have a very big repository which you want to unprotect, you can create an unprotection rule and make sure that everything will be unprotected during one task, one action. A few words again about the federated policies, okay? That works for Nextcloud and SharePoint. I was talking about that earlier a little bit. The idea here is to take tasks away from the admin to make the life of the admin a little easier by having him by doing the following. Let me explain that. So usually how the system works at the moment, or how it worked until now, as for the admin, you would manage on SharePoint side, on Nextcloud side, your users and your permissions over folders for those users. Okay, that will be one task to do, who can access what kind of folder and with what kind of permission. And on the other hand, you would manage your SealPath users and SealPath policies and permissions. So we have now merged those two tasks into one by creating federated policy feature, which allows to read what users and what permissions are set over folders on Nextcloud and SharePoint, and dynamically adapt the federated policy according to what was set in Nextcloud and SharePoint. Okay, so every time you do any modifications there, the policy will adapt. It will even adapt. If files are protected with such a federated policies, wherever they are, they would adapt on your changes on your repository as well. Okay, so keep that in mind, that we have that launched for Nextcloud and SharePoint. We will launch it for file system files as well in the near future. So be aware that changes will be communicated very soon. Regarding the graphical user interface, we have now the possibility to create this authentication, which you're required to do when you connect to SharePoint. You can do that now on the agent itself. Okay. Before that, we had a separate tool. Now it's easier to authenticate on the same agent. There is the reprotection rule, folder reprotection rule type. Here you basically define how the system should behave in a potential case of reprotection. Let me explain a use case here. So there might be a user who is in the possession of a file which is protected with policy A, to which he doesn't have permission to access, but there might be a folder with a protection rule with policy B, which he do have permission over. Okay, so as the protection is being done by an admin user, he might take the file and drop it into that reprotection folder, into the folder where a different policy would be applied and would be reprotecting the file. So you might need to control those scenarios. You might need to define, if I want to allow reprotection, and if I do want to allow it, under what circumstances, with what policy of origin I want to reprotect to my new policy. Okay, so imagine you can say, okay, reprotect my files if they are protected with policy A, B, C, but nothing else. So if there is a file protected with policy D, the file will stay protected with policy D. It will not be reprotected. Okay, so that's a more granular control of how a reprotection, in which case a reprotection should be possible and in which cases it should not. The folder picker, I will demonstrate that in a moment, showing you the structure of your folders and your folders within Nextcloud and SharePoint and Google Drive as well. We have alerts for every rule, showing you if there was some kind of issue with protecting some files. You can have those alerts resolved automatically. There could be some cases that a file is being used by a user, so the protection is not possible. There are some attempts of protecting it, which would cause several alerts, but once the user closes the file, the system is capable of protecting it. So the rule could be, or the alert will be shown as solved. So you have a lot of feedback here for every rule about what is happening there, if there is something going on that should require some additional action. Also, for additional troubleshooting for SharePoint, we have a new section in the event viewer. If you integrate with SharePoint, you can see there if there are some events that would require some troubleshooting or if there's something going on in the backend. Finally, there is a counter counting for every rule how many files have been protected. And also, if you do some modifications on the rule, after some disconnections, etc., you can rescan the rule and make a new iteration of checking if there is a new file in the folder. In some cases, that might be useful. So, long story short, let me tell you, or let me show you how it actually looks like. Okay, so what you see here is my AutoVault agent and my SharePoint. I have a rule created for that SharePoint folder already. So what I will do right now, I will simply drop a PDF document into that folder. And in the meantime, while it is being protected, it takes a little while as I have a delay set up for 1 minute here. What I can do is I can show you here in the options, cloud storage, how we have to authenticate the repository first. So here I set up the URL, the authentication credentials with OAuth, or I could do simple credentials as well, some additional parameters in case I would use an ADFS, etc. And once I authenticate, I would go there to folders and create a folder protection rule. So let me show you how this one looks like here. What you see is it has a name. It is set to protect right now. Okay, this is the unprotection rule I could create here as well. I could make sure everything from that folder will be unprotected now. I have set it to SharePoint. There is no need to provide an account name. Here I would see my folder picker, so I see the structure of my SharePoint. I could search for certain folders, etc. I could also just go there and copy and paste the URL from the browser. That would be okay as well. Now here I define which protection I want to apply. So in my case, it's the financial policy, how the system should behave in a potential case of reprotection. I talked about earlier, if subfolders should be included, if I want to apply a protection according to a classification, and that will be basically it, okay? So as you see here, my file was already protected. You see that by the SLPTH extension. Other files should also be protected, so we can open them, for example, with my secure browser, okay, where I need to provide an identity first. I will provide the identity of Andrew Robinson, s3lab.com, who is a user within the financial policy with view and edit permission. Okay, so that user here logs in into the system, and I have clicked too many times here, I think. Let me try again. Okay, so here I see my permissions, view and edit permissions are given for that particular user. Having edit permission shows up this Office Web Apps panel, allowing to do some modifications here, which will be stored on the SharePoint side as well. Okay, so yeah, that's basically it. Yeah, I could also download the file and open it in the secure browser as a standalone, being an external user, etc. So I think you get the idea of how the module works. The same way on Nextcloud, Google Drive, on your NAS or your local file storage as well. Okay, so let's move forward to the second part, which is the agents and users monitoring feature. The idea here is to have visibility on what is happening to your agents and to your users, if your users are logged into your agents and if your agents are active. Okay, so the idea is to make sure that maybe you have local folder protection rules applied by users or centrally managed. You have distributed the rule of protecting all the personal, all the documents folders within the personal user folders. You can make sure that the agent is always running. First of all, we have implemented a feature that makes sure that the process cannot be killed by the users intentionally or unintentionally. It goes up every time someone tries to stop it. That's on the agent side, on the endpoint side. And on the admin side, we have the possibility here to activate this feature for a particular organization. So it works both on SaaS and on-prem. Okay, so once this is activated here, you see monitoring shows up in the menu. You can enable this feature here. And then you have two views. First, you can see your active users, active, inactive, and when the last activity was registered. Okay, because first of all, I didn't mention that you can define the signal between the I'm alive signal, how frequent it should be, how many, what's the interval between the signals of your agents. And those signals for users can be viewed in the first view here. It allows you to filter, to find a specific user, to find active or inactive users. You see the date of time of the last connection, and you get more information by clicking on the blue button, which would show you on which machine the user is logged in. Okay, we could have a scenario where multiple users are logged into the same machine using desktop machine installation of the product. So on operating systems, multi-user operating systems, that could be useful to see on what machines there are. Or you go the reverse way, you start or you search for the agents and to know what agents are active and what users are active on those agents. So let me demonstrate that quickly here. I will log in. Here it is. I will log in as an admin to my web admin portal. As you see, my monitoring here is activated already from my organization. The feature is also enabled. My interval is set to 10 minutes. So if I go to the users view, I can search for all of them, only the active ones, only the inactive ones. And by clicking on more information, don't get afraid. This is a demo environment. Only the users here are only for demo, for testing reasons. So when I click on more information, I see what machine on which IP address was that particular user active on. And if I go to agents, I can search for an agent, the user process, the IP address, and the last signal. Also searching for a particular machine name or active, inactive users. And here under more information, I know which users have been active on a particular machine here as well. Okay, so that's basically it for the agents monitoring. Just to wrap up, bring to your memory that SealPath has one, if not the best, usability. We are capable of working agentless, have offline access possibilities, etc. We have maximum protection for highly regulated sectors, very agile operation, both on SaaS and on-prem, very quick deployment, and a pretty attractive offer. So that's not what we say. That's also confirmed by independent authorities and auditors, as you can see here on that slide. Thank you very, very much again for your time, for your questions, for being here today. I hope you will have a great day, and yes, hope to speak to you soon. Take good care. Bye-bye.